What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Forward Progress Week 8 Best Bets Edition, live here on the Forward Progress YouTube channel, part of the Hammer Betting Network, and presented by Fanduel. I'm Rob Pizzola, joined by Suma, Hitman, Young Judah. Today, we're breaking down 12 games in the NFL. I tweeted out 13, but it's actually going to be 12, as I made some last-minute adjustment to the schedule here. Bryce Young starting Sunday, breaking news. We're not covering it on the show today, thankfully. God, I don't want to talk about the Panthers again. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an episode. But let's get right into it. We're going to start with a quick review of last week, where we went 2-2 on best bets. Now, we don't have a graphic today. There's a little bit issue getting it uploaded before the show. This is not intentionally sabotaging Hitman now that he finally has a good record. I swear it's not the case. 2-2, Hitman wins. The run of 2024 continues. Seahawks handily beat the Falcons. That was a big one for him. Suma gets an easy winner, Monday Night Football over in the Ravens game. I lose the over on Commanders. Probably didn't deserve it anyways, but Jaden Daniels getting injured certainly didn't help. Judah, you got backdoored by Jameis Winston, emergency quarterback, coming in that game on Cincinnati alt spread. That's a tough one, but 2-2. Such is life. Sometimes you catch the breaks. Sometimes you don't. Hitman, the only one of us over 500 this season on best bets or worst bets, whatever you want to call it, depending on how you want to look at it. Hitman in the lead. But of course, if we're taking a long-term approach, like I would suggest every bettor does, Hitman's still struggling near the bottom.
I think Suma and I might be close to equal all time. It's Suma and I at the dumps. And
yeah. I think you guys both might have less wins than Eric Eager, who hasn't been on the show once this year.
all the PFF guys are the same. So we'll just count PFF in one corner, you know?
Oh, man. All right. Let's waste no time. Let's get into it here. 12 games to cover, like I mentioned. We'll talk through them. If we have an opinion on them, we'll cover them. If we don't have an opinion on them, we are going to skip the game completely. But let's start with Jameis Winston getting the start for the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski said it today, at home to the Baltimore Ravens. And looking at the number in this game right now, Fanduel sitting at 9.5 minus 115. Total in the game is 44.5. We'll start there with the total in this game. Judah, you lead us off this week.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of on all sides. I like the over here. Obviously, you're getting an upgrade from Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Deshaun Watson to Jameis Winston. I think the market is aware of that, of course. But where I think it's especially vulnerable is looking the Ravens secondary right now is pretty hurt. Marlon Humphrey, I do not think is going to play. He's really been the glue of that secondary. Brandon Stevens has really struggled, as well as some of their other secondary pieces. And I think this is a Browns offense which is going to throw the ball down the field a lot more. That's something they were doing a whole bunch when they did not have Deshaun Watson at quarterback. Obviously, Joe Flacco being the more noteworthy one, but that's exactly the sort of thing that plays through overs, explosive plays, incompletions, things of that variety. But honestly, what most of this is about is the Ravens offense is an absolute house. And there's probably some sort of kind of matchup. I guess you diminish them a bit, given the Browns defense, which has been a solid unit. They're especially good in pass rush, but Lamar Jackson's scrambling ability has a way to kind of mitigate that. And I don't see how any defense right now is stopping the Ravens, given how good they are, both passing and running. They themselves can kind of cover most of the total here. I see a lot of different pathways to this heading.
All right, Judah starting us off with the over in this game. I'll jump in here because I don't think the market has correctly reflected the difference in the quarterback situation for the Browns in this game. You look at Deshaun Watson this year. He took 33 sacks this season. He had a 59.3 EPA lost from sacks this year, which is borderline insane. You look at the Ravens, their secondary has allowed 34 completions of 20 or more yards. That's the most explosive pass plays allowed in the entire NFL. They could potentially be without Marlon Humphrey here against a quarterback that does like to throw downfield. Wyatt Teller activated from IR today. There's a chance that he could play, and you get a completely healthy Browns offensive line with Nick Chubb there. I think the Browns have gone from being honestly incredibly overrated, as dumb as that sounds, even with Deshaun Watson. I think they were overrated in market to underrated in market right now. Yes, the Ravens are a wagon. I know there's a lot of Ravens fans who are fans of Forward Progress who call me out every single time I want to bet against Baltimore. But to me, this is just too big of a number. One other thing, Judah's all into the fancy stats. He's posting them on his Twitter all the time. One that I love is havoc rate in the NFL, which is it's basically a percentage of plays that result in a tackle for loss, forced fumble, interception, pass breakup, or a sack. Cleveland's defense is number one in havoc rate this year at 22%. They also play a ton of man defense, which Lamar's success against man defense is much lower than zone. I think the Cleveland Browns are more live in this game than people realize. So I'm taking the Browns in this one. 9.5 is good. Those are the numbers in market right now. I got bet down from Andy yesterday, but Judah making a case for the over. I'm making a case for the Browns. We're going to move it on here to Miami. Tua Tagovailoa is back. Talked about it on the Monday show. Eric Pauly brought it up with Suma and Judah. Doesn't look like he's going to be wearing a Guardian cap or anything like that, but does look very likely that he's going to start in this game. Market currently sitting at Dolphins -3, -120. Total in the game, 46.5. Hitman, we'll start with you here because you have a lean on the side.
Yeah, lean towards Miami. I missed the boat on the -3s earlier. Probably would need the -3s to come back to get involved in them. I also think that Miami alts could be decent, considering the just uncertainty around how good this Miami team is, considering that Tua has only been the quarterback for 6 quarters this year. Defensively, Miami has surprised a lot of people. They're allowing a league low 24 yards per drive. They're 7th in EPA per play, 5th in success rate. Obviously, this offense has shown us over a pretty big sample size the past 2-3 seasons that they absolutely destroy bad defenses, and they've hung pretty big numbers on bad defenses. Arizona's defense is dealing with more defensive injuries from after Monday Night Football. They're 29th in pressure rate this season, so they can't really expose the Miami weakness offensively, which is their offensive line. And also just it's a bad spot for Arizona, playing on the West Coast on Monday, having to fly to Miami. So I would need the -3s to come back, but I have a lean towards Miami.
Suma, pick it up here because I know you like the same side.
Yes, absolutely agree. I would also love to get a -3. I still have a small lean towards a decent -3.5. Miami's defense, they have not played the absolute juggernauts offenses, so I don't care much about their overall metrics, but they show up high on a lot of decent pass rush metrics. So I think they are a little bit underrated there. Arizona is still dealing with some injuries along the offensive line. And on the other side, I think that the Miami offense might absolutely roll in this spot. Tua is at his best when there's not a lot of pressure. We know that the Dolphins' O-line is not great at pass protection, but I mentioned it, Arizona's pass rush is very bad. Now they lost Dennis Gardeck, who was basically their best remaining edge rusher. So I think Tua should be able to get the ball out quick anyway, but on top of that, also don't face too much quick pressure. So I think they are going to torch that Cardinals defense, and I'm not sure that the Arizona offense will be able to hold on in the department on the other side.
I'm going to agree with you guys on this one as well. So FanDuel does have the best price in market right now. If you're looking to bet the Dolphins -3, -120, by far the best price that still exists out there at FanDuel right now. Most of the market's gone to 3.5. Listen, I struggle with this one because you do have a lot of precedent for quarterbacks returning off of an injury that they tend to struggle in the first game back. I have significantly reduced the effectiveness I think Tua will be at in this game, and I still have an edge on this game. I do think that the offense has a lot of viable matchups here. But on top of that, I think the Cardinals' offense is overrated as well right now. You look at the separation that the receivers are getting, it's next to nothing. There was a very clear point of emphasis to try to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball a little bit more this week. and it just didn't work. He got 3 receptions. I think he was targeted 6 times. He ranks dead last in separation for wide receivers in the NFL right now, and that's why his reception percentage is below 50%. I like Miami on both sides of the ball this game. I think this number is short. And Judah, we'll throw it to you here because I think you're looking to attack the alt market in this game.
Yeah, I think the alt market is the way to go. I would maybe say on the injury point, I think it is some concern, but we also don't have quarterbacks taking as long a break from a concussion, which is probably confounding a bit. Usually these guys are kind of rushed back into action. I think if Miami is the offense that resembles the 2022 and 2023 version, where Tua is on track against the Arizona defense that is bottom 3 in virtually any metric you want to use, just got lit up on Monday Night Football. This is an offense that we know can score and put up a lot of points, and that's precisely the kind of thing you're looking for in covering an alt, just by virtue of these are real points in real games. And especially if you get into that sort of game script, Miami, as Sue mentioned, has been great at the quick pressure stuff. They've been Arizona's been pretty reliant on their run game in order to have success. There's actually a very strong correlation between games in which they've run the ball well and passed the ball well. I don't think that's a coincidence based on how they run their offense. All of that kind of culminates in an attractive spot for an alt price.
All right. Looks like clean sweep on the board here for Miami, whether that be the general spread or alts. We're all looking at the Dolphins in this game thinking that they are underpriced. We're going to move it on here to the Colts and the Texans, a rematch of the week 1 game. Colts, we can say, got pretty lucky against the Dolphins last week to cover that margin. I see XF saying that in the chat as well. There was some Colts money that showed this morning, brought this number down to 5.5, although it's juiced towards the Texans here at Fanduel right now. Total in the game is 46.5. I'm going to bat lead off on this one. There's a theme with a few games that I like this week, including potentially the best bet that I'm going to give out later on, where I just don't trust the team to win by margin right now enough. I don't trust their offense enough. And there's a lot of things I don't like about this Indianapolis Colts team, but they do tend to play the Houston Texans pretty tough under Shane Steichen. And right now, this Texans offense just continues to look broken on a weekly basis. You look at 22 points against the Packers last week. That might seem fine. 10 of those points came off turnovers. Houston generated less than 200 yards of total offense. They have no passing game. Their play calling is a complete disaster right now. And you look at the Colts, which is primarily a cover 3 defense, very vanilla cover 3 defense. CJ Stroud this year, 37% success rate against cover 3, minus 0.14 EPA per dropback against cover 3. And Indianapolis's defense is much healthier than it was earlier on in the year. You look at the injuries that they had in the secondary in the early part of the season. Kenny Moore was banged up. Sam Womack was banged up. They had injuries on the defensive line. We might get DeForest Buckner potentially back this week. Ryan Kelly's healthy on the offensive line. Braden Smith, receiving core's healthy. Jonathan Taylor might be back this week. I think there's a lot of upside here with the Indianapolis Colts. I do not trust the Texans right now to cover these types of margins with the state of their offense. Whether you want to buy the 5.5 now is a different story, because 6 is obviously a much more valuable number. Potentially you hold off, hope that there's some Houston money that shows, but I think the Colts are the valuable side in this game. Hitman, I know you had a release on this earlier in the week. I'm curious whether or not you still like it at the current price.
I would need 6 on the Colts, but Rob just kind of stole literally everything that I planned on saying. I really strongly agree with him about this week, a theme being in some of these games, just certain teams not being built to win by margin, and Houston is one of them. I agree that I do value the past history with these two teams. The last 3 matchups was an 11-point Colts win, a 4-point loss at the end when they had to drop the pass on 4th down, the last game of last season, and a 2-point loss earlier this season. Houston's offense didn't score a touchdown the final 3 quarters after Nico Collins left against Buffalo. Stroud played pretty decent game against an absolutely terrible New England defense, but the 41 points scored in that game was partially indicative of the turnovers that New England had that gave Houston the ball in New England territory. And last week, Stroud was 10 of 21 for 86 yards against the Packers. So it's been a little bit of a rough sample size without Nico Collins on the field the past few weeks. Houston's not team that I want to trust to win by margin because of how conservative they are on early downs. Stroud is top 5 in the league as far as being put in the 3rd and long situations, and that's the spots where Collins being out it's just really magnified when their play calling is so predictable. And as Rob said, the Colts healthiest they've been all season possibly, and Houston, we'll have to see how the injury report comes in, but they did have some pretty notable defensive injuries last week, missing both their starting linebackers, their starting safety, Jimmy Ward, their starting corner, Kamari Lassiter. So we'll have to see how the injury report turns out being, but I lean towards Indy.
Yeah, just with the early news out of Houston, there's a chance Lassiter is back this week. I would say more likely than not, but it looks like the rest are leaning more doubtful than probable in that game. We'll shift gears here. Jacksonville returns home from the 2-week London trip, and they're taking on the Green Bay Packers, who were probably pretty unlucky not to win by margin last week against the Texans. Market in this game is 4.5, total 48.5. Judah, you're looking at some alts here. Which team are you looking at alts for?
Yeah, I like Green Bay here. I think Jacksonville is particularly vulnerable to, number one, the pass rush has been bad, but they're the bottom at most metrics. And I think where they play a ton of man coverage, which means that they're going to be more reliant on the matchups, and they'll have better success in spots where they can win, i.e. last week against a Patriots. I mean, the pass game was fine, but the wide receivers there struggle to generate separation. And that's a very different story against the Packers, who have 4 guys who are all well above average in their separation. And the Jaguars have also struggled to defend against explosive plays. They're the 3rd worst in that category. Jordan Love has more yards via the explosive play than any other quarterback. And also he sees a massive spike in explosive plays when he is facing man coverage rather than zone coverage. Zone coverage, he's kind of middle of the pack. He has the fourth most explosive plays against man, which the Jaguars play a bunch of. These are the sorts of things that matters. Number one, from an efficiency perspective, and number two, in covering large spreads, get a couple of quick strikes that can kind of lead to a bunch of points relatively quickly. And the last thing I'll say here is the Packers defense very quietly is really shooting up the charts in basically any metric you'll see. I think they're like 7th in EPA per pass now. They've gone up against 3 mediocre to good offenses. It's not just a function of poor opponents. And they're creeping up at everything. They started to blitz at about a 30% clip. They were at the 15% mark for the first bunch of weeks of the season. That has led to a massive increase in pressure rate. I think this is sustainable. The players this is also a new defensive coordinator. This is like not entirely surprising given teams do get better, game 6, 7, 8, 9 in new schemes. I see this as both sides of the ball. The Packers are a little bit underpriced in this spot.
All right, that's 4 games down, 8 games to go. Before we do, though, football is in full swing, and there's no better place to get in on the NFL action than Fanduel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Just place any $5 bet. You get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Use your bets on spreads, props, live bets, over-unders, and so much more. Personally love betting on Fanduel. We utilize them in our live watch-alongs every single time that we do these watch-alongs, and the product is great. So make sure you check them out. Visit fanduel.com/forwardprogress. Download America's #1 sportsbook. That's fanduel.com/forwardprogress. You must be 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real wager money only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. 888-789-7777. ccpg.org/Chad in Connecticut. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts. 1-877-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. And of course, we give out bets on this show, but bet within your limits. Extremely important. Make sure that you're managing your bankroll effectively going forwards. All right, guys, let's get into it. More to cover on the show here. Atlanta and Tampa Bay, divisional rematch from a few weeks back, which was a crazy game in prime time. The big news in this game is obviously the injury situation for the Tampa Bay Bucs at receiver. Mike Evans, hamstring injury. He'll be out. Chris Godwin, out for the year. with a dislocated ankle, gruesome injury there. We've seen this line completely flip from the look ahead, which was Tampa Bay -2.5, now at +2.5. Total in the game, 45.5. Suma, we'll start with you here. You're looking at one of the sides in this game.
Yes, I'm looking towards the Falcons here. You said it, tons of injuries for the Bucs. They're also without Jamal Dean, who is on IR. They will be without Tyke Smith, who is in the concussion protocol, short week. Probably a higher chance of missing this game. Jordan Whitehead cannot cover anyone out there. I think that the Bucs defense is really, really bad and piling up with injuries right now. I think that the Falcons offense should have a pretty decent and clean game. And I'm just not sure what to make of the offense without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Godwin was so significant for them on all these underneath targets. Mike Evans draws coverage on all those deeper routes. Baker Mayfield was also pretty good at hitting those two guys. So not sure what to expect from guys like Sterling Shepard, Trey Palmer. I lean towards the Falcons. Yeah, I also think that Todd Bowles plays a lot of cover 3 and cover 4. I have to think that they might play a little bit more zone coverage now with those cornerback injuries, and Kirk Cousins has been pretty much cooking against cover 3 and cover 4. So like the matchup for the Atlanta Falcons offense, and I'm even as a Baker stan this season, I don't really know what to expect from that offense going forward.
All right, Judah, you wanted to make an argument for the other side here.
Yeah, going to agree with Cottage in the chat here. I think that the market's overreacting to the wide receiver injuries. Chris Godwin had struggled the past couple of years. Mike Evans had also been like way on the downturn, and I'm looking at things like separation metrics. Both of those guys have a massive increase this year. I don't think that Father Time kind of magically made them a little bit better. I think the scheme is propping them up a bunch. And I would also note that they're not replacing them with complete nobodies. Yes, Sterling Shepard's been dealing with injuries. His underlying numbers for years now have been terrific. Jalen McMillan also has done a good job in terms of his ability to earn separation. I think what's most important for this game is that the splits of Baker Mayfield with and without pressure are so drastic. He's performed at a top 5 clip when not pressured. Whereas he's one of the bottom quarterbacks when pressured. I think that's like really the main kind of stat I look at in kind of looking at any matchup with the Bucs. And the Falcons pass rush has been absent this season. In their first matchup, Baker Mayfield had a clean pocket on 100% of his throws. Obviously, I don't expect that to continue, but I think it points directionally in the ability for the Bucs offense to stay clean against this Atlanta defense. At the end of the day, I think this is just a little bit too much of a move by the market, especially considering I think how well the scheme can hide a lot of these injuries.
I personally like the over a little bit in this game. I know a lot of people will talk about the wide receiver injuries. I do think Atlanta's going to move the ball quite successfully in this one. Look at Tampa Bay. They blitz at the highest rate in the league, 43%, but they still only generate a pressure about 25% of the time, which is the 7th worst mark in the league. So they're blitzing a lot, not getting home. They're leaving bad corners one-on-one. They have issues in the secondary with players on IR, plus another injury this week on Monday Night Football as well. I just don't think they can cover the Atlanta receivers. On the other side, I do agree with Judah on the Tampa Bay offense here, and it's purely because of the Atlanta defense. I'll reference Havoc plays again, but the Falcons' Havoc rate is dead last in the entire league right now. They just don't generate pressure. The defense isn't really doing all that much. They sit in zone at a very high rate. Baker is very good against zone defenses. He was top 10 in the league last year as well. He's been top 5 this season. Cover 3, 61% success rate against cover 3. Now, granted, there's a huge drop-off at receiver here, but I just don't like the Falcons' defense enough. I think that there's a pretty big overreaction here, and Tampa Bay to me still profiles as a very, very big over team. So I'm looking at the over in this game at 45.5 right now. We'll keep it moving along. This was supposed to be Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams. It still could be. We don't know as of yet. It was announced that Jaden Daniels would be week to week, but there's some speculation that he might be able to suit up and play this week. The market has reacted, though, to the potential of Marcus Mariota starting. Chicago now 2.5-point favorites on the road here. Total been bet down to 43.5. juiced slightly towards the over. Hitman, we can lead it off with you here. You're looking at one of the sides in this game.
Yeah, so I make the game 3-ish with Daniels out. Chicago obviously favored. Washington, I'd say probably would have likely, if Daniels was 100% healthy for this game, probably would have been in the -2.5-ish range, I would have guessed. For me, it just comes down to this. The market is indicating that Daniels is very, very likely out. I'm not going to say like what I've personally heard, but I believe that's closer to 50-50. Dan Quinn himself said today that Jaden Daniels is close to returning to practice. How much of that is gamesmanship or not, I don't know, but I just think it's closer to 50-50. I could easily be wrong. I do not, if I knew that he was going to play in this game, or anybody knows, I recommend you to bet a fortune on the Washington money line, because you're just going to be able to scalp it if you want profit after the news becomes known. Washington money line was just an average sized bet for me, because it still is up in the air, but I just believe that there's a better chance of Daniel playing in this game than what the market is implying right now. And Jaden Daniels is amongst the most valuable quarterbacks, obviously, in the entire league. And this line's going to shift drastically based off if he's in the game or not. So that's simply my handicap.
I'm going the simple handicap with Hitman. Trademark infringement right there, by the way. I'm going to be opposite of you, Hitman, in this game. I don't know what the bet timing is going to look like, because when you get potentially the Mariota announcement, I do expect the market to steam towards Chicago, and I'm going to be looking to be part of that team. I don't think Mariota is anywhere close to what he looked like last week against a very, very bad Panthers defense. I mean, he was second in EPA per dropback last week, and I just don't think that's going to continue going forwards. I think we have a pretty large sample of what Mariota is at this point in his career, and it's nowhere near Jaden Daniels. Caleb Williams has a very good matchup in this game against Washington. The Commanders don't generate pressure. You know, you look at the splits for Caleb Williams this year, you beat him by generating pressure. He's the second worst QB in the league in EPA per dropback when he is pressured, but the Commanders can't do that because of injuries in the front seven. And on top of that, Chicago has 3 good wide receivers that are going to get separation. I'm also less concerned about the injuries in Chicago's secondary if we have Mariota here. Conversely, there is the chance that you get Jaden Daniels and the market steams back towards Washington. This was originally announced as a week-to-week injury for Jaden Daniels. I saw him throwing on the sideline last week. Did not look comfortable at all. I think the market will value him at close to 100%, and I don't think he's going to be there anyways. I'm going to like Chicago no matter what. I just think it's a matter of market timing on this one. So set your alerts, set tweet notifications, try to be on top of it, but I will likely be on the Bears this week. Suma, I know you have an opinion on this game we'll talk about later, but you also like the total in this game as well.
Yes, leaning slightly towards the over, even with Marcus Mariota. The Bears still have a few injuries in the secondary. Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker were not at practice today. There's a reasonable chance that they missed this game. And I think that I'm super high on the Commanders offense, on that scheme, on Cliff Kingsbury as a play caller this year. So I think that even with Marcus Mariota, the Commanders should still be able to get a few scoring drives done. And I am pretty much down on the Commanders defense. They had a matchup last week where no one thought about their defense that much, but that defense on the season is still really, really bad. They have some guys on IR already, and the Bears are getting better and better and better. Rookie after the bye week maybe might see another small bump, and I think that the Commanders defense does not match up well with that Bears offense at all. So small lean towards the over here at the current market price. And what Hitman said, if there is a slight chance that Daniels plays, I think that total will also get up a little bit.
All right, before we move on to our next game here, only about 1/5 of you have smashed that like button down below. If you're enjoying the content here, just take 2 seconds, hit that like button. It lets YouTube know that people are enjoying the content, circulates it out to a larger audience for us. So if you do enjoy the content, take 2 seconds, hit that like button down below. We'll move on here to the Jets and the Patriots. It's an AFC East matchup. The Jets are reeling right now, coming off an embarrassing performance on Monday Night Football against the Steelers. We had the Patriots also look pretty embarrassing in London, getting blown out by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Taking a look at the market in this game, we're still sitting at 7.5 in most spots, some 7s on the board there, but a lot of money on the under today as well. We did get to 41 at one point in the market, so some early money here on the under. And a lot of us in this forward progress group here are looking at the total in this game and maybe opposed to the market right now. Hitman, I'll start with you.
Yeah, lean towards the over. In this, it really just comes down to me that these defenses are not close to what our priors were before the season. And specifically, like the Jets defense is just not been the unit that it was once thought to be. They're down. They're both of their starting safeties in this game. They allowed the Steelers to score the most points that they've scored since Big Ben was the starting quarterback. The run defense has been super inconsistent. This year, just the past 2 weeks alone, they've allowed 161, 186 yards to Buffalo and Pittsburgh. Obviously, we all remember the opening day game against San Francisco. Patriots defense is awful without Bill Belichick now calling it. It's the only matchup this season that Aaron Rodgers has looked like vintage Aaron Rodgers against, throwing for over 8 yards per attempt and 77% completions. Against this Patriots defense, they scored 24 points in a matchup where his offense was not pushed at all. They could have easily scored into the 30s in that game if there was just any resistance from the New England offense. I'm confident the Jets are going to score points. It's a short sample size on Drake May, but the offense has been better with him. They rank 18th in explosive plays with May as compared to 31st with Brissett. He definitely adds a bit more of a ceiling towards his Patriots offense, in my opinion. So just a slight lean towards the over.
Judah, over to you here as well.
Yeah, I think the Jets defense is dealing with some significant injuries that I don't think the market is properly accounting for. Basically, all of their corners are hurt to some degree. Whether it's Sauce Gardner, who's clearly playing through an injury, Michael Carter and DJ Reed missed last week. Completely uncertain if they'll be back. They lost Adams, their safety as well. I think on the other side, even with Hassan Reddick coming back, he's probably going to be rusty. He's been holding out. He's been practicing for months now. Even still, I think what Drake May offers a lot more than Jacoby Brissett is an ability to create, especially when facing the pass rush. His pocket extension, his ability to limit sacks and create. From there, obviously, any production-based metric you're going to use is a little bit shaky just by virtue of it being a 2-game sample. But I think the kind of stylistic parts of it and his ability to create is going to be relatively sticky, which I think mitigates a bit what the Jets can do. And this is just not the same defense when you're talking about losing some all-world corners or guys who are playing through injury. And I think the Patriots defense is bad. The Jets offense has not been the major problem, at least in terms of moving the ball, maybe some fluky turnovers. I think this on all sides is telling me to bet the over here.
Suma, anything to add on this one?
Bill Belichick said it, that defense is soft, and it feels like a get-right game for the Jets offense. I agree with everything that those guys have said. Jets injury report is going to be very interesting. Tony Adams also left with a hamstring injury. Sauce Gardner popped something late in the game. Might be nothing, could be something to monitor, but I also agree and lean towards the over.
We'll make that a clean sweep here on forward progress. I agree as well. Per True Media, the Jets have 3 offensive linemen this year that rank top 19 in pressure percentage. John Simpson, Elijah Vera Tucker, Joe Tippmann. The Patriots cannot get pressure right now. I hate picking these spots for a get right game for offense, but it really does feel like everyone is using the Patriots defense as a kind of a get right game at this point. And I do expect the Jets to score. Drake May, a big upgrade for me as well. So make that a clean sweep, leans towards the over here. And we'll revisit this game next week when it ends in a 6-3 New York Jets final. I'm only mildly joking, by the way. All right, let's keep going.
The leans only count when you win them.
Yeah, we use the leans when we win, of course. Listen, we're promoting our network. Actually, to be fair, we did scrap the leanser board. For those who remember last year, we did have the leanser board every week. We did it for Hitman because his best bets were so bad, but every other bet he was giving out was winning. So we did have the leanser board. We might actually have to bring that back at some point. We'll have to do like an exhaustive deep dive of all the picks that have been given out on the show and bring back the leanser board. Toting 101, says John. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, keep it going here. It's the Eagles and the Bengals. Very unique situation here, as these teams have played the same teams over the course of the last 2 weeks. So, a lot of people are just doing derivatives of what the closing spreads were in the last few games to set a market in this game. Number at Fanduel right now is Bengals -1.5, -115. If you are looking to bet the Bengals, Fanduel is going to be your best price in market. Total in the game, 47.5. Rest of market is 48 as well in this game. Suma, you're the only one with thoughts on this game, and you were looking at one of the sides.
Yeah, unfortunately, the market has moved down a lot. Would have had a lean on the Eagles, but right now we are pretty much moving into my fair on the game. Hurts looked very iffy as a passer the last 2 games, but he also faced 2 very good defensive lines in terms of a quick pressure rate above expected, and the Bengals are somewhere around league average, I would say. So I think that Hurts should have more clean pockets, should have a cleaner game through the air, and the Bengals defense, they rank second worst in success rate against non-QB1s. So that doesn't even include a potential thought about Jalen Hurts running the ball. I think that the Eagles might get into their very favorable game script of grounding and pounding, where the Bengals will need to hit the box to somehow stop it. And then there will be one-on-one situations for AJ Brown on the side. So I really like the matchup for the Eagles offense. And while I think the Bengals offense is still pretty good, I think there are some issues structurally with them. And if they get into a bad game script where they have to be predictable, I think this is a game script that really plays into the favor of the Eagles with their run game.
All right, keep it moving here. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, not the Kansas City Chiefs. The Seattle Seahawks and the Buffalo Bills. Pretty interesting matchup. Obviously, big injury news for the Seattle Seahawks in this game. DK Metcalf out with an injury. There was some market movement towards Seattle earlier today. They did get hit across the board. We're sitting at a flat 3 right now in market, 47.5, juiced pretty heavily to the under here. Judah, you want to look at the total in this game?
Yeah, I like the over here. I think these are 2 probably top 10 offenses. And I think when you look at the matchups, Buffalo has done a very good job against offenses that are reliant on explosive plays. They've done this for years on end now, but that's not the area that Seattle's attacking. They're attacking the middle of the field on a lot of these intermediate routes where Buffalo has been particularly vulnerable with their injuries. And I also think on the other side, the market is not yet caught up to the Bills. Adding Amari Cooper, I think, is a massive move, not only by adding a number 1 receiver, but I think kind of the second and third order effects of that are going to trickle down the rest of the offense, where now you have Khalil Shakir getting a little less attention and in a slot role where he can excel. Keon Coleman now seeing a lot more one-on-ones, where he's developed a lot of chemistry on these like back shoulder throws and these deep passes that I think this offense with Allen playing at the level he is right now is one of the best in the NFL. The Seahawks secondary has cluster injuries, and I see this on looking at the matchups and just the base rates, even without DK Metcalf, though I don't think it's certain he's going to be out. They've got plenty of depth at the receiver position, and they're using their running backs extremely well, where Buffalo is particularly vulnerable. I see this as a spot where both teams are going to put up some points.
So Judah looking at the over here. Suma, you were looking at one of the sides.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much all the stuff that Judah has said. I like the matchup for the Buffalo Bills offense slightly more here. They just traded for Ernest Jones. the Seahawks. I'm not sure that makes a big difference just this week. Also, we don't really know about the severity of the DK Metcalf injury. They announced that he's not going to practice today and tomorrow. He was called week to week. Could be a minor MCL sprain. Probably hard to anticipate that he's going to be close to 100%, even if he's going to play. So might be a coin flip, game time decision later in the week. But this Seahawks defense is still bad, and I think that the Bills should be able to move the ball on the ground, through the air. Amari Cooper should absolutely help. I think that Seattle will have a good shot if their defensive line is really going to have a strong game where they control the line of scrimmage. But I just don't really see that. So I just trust the Bills offense overall more. Seattle, they had a great game against Atlanta, but this offense is still pretty wonky in the trenches. If they don't have DK Metcalf, should be another limitation. And the Bills' defensive line is pretty decent. The Seahawks might get Abe Lucas and or George Fant back, so right tackle might be a little bit stronger this week, but I still don't think that this O-line is anywhere close to league average, and the Bills should be able to control the line of scrimmage and overall just look like a more sound team than the Seahawks.
Okay, we got 3 more games to cover and then our best bets. Before we do, I actually do love it when people in the comments do the promo for me. The second best bets show today on the Hammer, the board was fire. For those who don't know, obviously NBA season has started. If you're looking for daily NBA picks, head over to the board. They're one of our sister channels, part of the Hammer Betting Network on YouTube. You can set notifications. They go live every morning, every weekday morning, 11:15 a.m. Eastern time. Jacob Gramenya and Pips NBA. Pips Vedran Ericic, Croatian guy, very in tune with the NBA schematically, very good breakdowns of the game. So check it out if you haven't already. The board on YouTube. You can also get that in podcast form after the fact on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Keep it moving along here. AFC West matchup. It's the Raiders. It's the Chiefs. The Chiefs keep winning. People keep finding excuses for why they're winning. Say Mahomes not playing too good. It's all defense, whatever. The Chiefs are perfect so far this year, but this is a big number on the road. Now, FanDuel's at 9.5 here. Most of the market is at 10 in this game. Total is pretty low at 41.5. Hitman, I'll start with you here. Thoughts on the game, Chiefs and the Raiders?
Yeah, I'm going to have more thoughts later on this, but I'll just say that if the Raiders at any point are down like 18 in the fourth quarter, Rob, we know that Antonio Pierce will kick 3 field goals to make the game land 9 and cover the spread for us. So is there any coach you rather have in this spot than Antonio Pierce? I'll have more on it later, but I lean towards the Raiders.
All right, Suma, I know you like the Raiders in this game as well, but you might have had one concern about this one in particular.
Yes, my biggest concern with the game is that the Raiders had a Patrick Mahomes Kermit doll back in August or in July at training camp. And Mahomes was just ice cold back then in his present, said, it will get handled when it gets handled. And there's probably don't poke the bear kind of stuff. But in general, it's a little bit tough to get to 10 here. The Chiefs offense, I don't know how much they will be able to incorporate DeAndre Hopkins. However, the Chiefs offense is success rating opposing teams to death. They rank first in success rate on early downs, middle of the pack in EPA per play. That also plays a role when you consider that Mahomes has 8 interceptions already, but they will try to dink and dunk you down the field. And the Raiders defense in the past has been a defense that tries to keep stuff in front of them. So I can absolutely still see the Chiefs offense having a very decent game for their standards, but I'm not sure whether they can easily drop 31 points here when they are forced to methodically move the ball down the field, and maybe it's a scoring endpoint where they score, I don't know, 24-ish points or something. And then I think the Raiders might be able, with Gardner Minshew, to catch a few breaks and stay within the number.
I'll make it a third that somewhat likes the Raiders in this game. True story. I woke up on Monday morning. I had evidently set an alarm for myself. It went off at 8 a.m. Eastern time that said, do not bet the Raiders this week, in brackets, Kermit the Frog. I had reminded myself not to bet the Raiders this week, and I'm probably going to bet the Raiders this week and ignore the advice I gave myself a few months ago. I really like the Chiefs, really strong defensively. Suma makes great points about success rating you to death, especially on early downs. But this is not the team that is necessarily built to win by margin all that often. It's not to say that they can't, but they have the least explosive passing plays in the entire league. They don't throw it downfield a whole lot. They'll run the ball. Andy Reid will get conservative and punt. I do sincerely worry about all the celebrating the Raiders did last year when they beat the Chiefs. In a lot of shit talking, and it might sound dumb to incorporate that in the handicap, but I'll likely bet the Raiders for about a half unit here and really regret it on Sunday when the Chiefs go to town. And like it could be one of those games where they don't forget and they really try to run up the score. But I just feel this number is a little bit too high. It always starts with the number. Kermit the Frog revenge game is certainly awesome. Okay. Sunday Night Football, Cowboys coming off the bye week. We have no idea who's going to be back for them on defense. We'll wait to see for the practices this week. For San Francisco, cluster injuries at wide receiver, which is why Dallas has taken all of this early money here. This number is down to 4.5 at FanDuel. There's some 4s out there on the board right now. Total has been getting slowly bet down as well. I'll start with you here, Judah. You're potentially thinking that this might be an overreaction.
Yeah, I think, again, I would not be universal in thinking about how wide receiver injuries or cluster injuries affect each particular team. I think Kyle Shanahan's ability to scheme guys open, kind of like Tampa Bay, matters a little bit more than the market is currently pricing. And it's not as if they're going to nobodies. I expect Juwan Jennings is 100% under the assumption that Juwan Jennings is back. When he's been the number one receiver or has gotten a lot of snaps, he has produced in every metric you want to look at, in every production stat. He's been great. Of course, Brandon Ayuk's done, but they're going to, like, Ricky Pearsall's a first round pick. Granted, he's working his way. He is not just some kind of random wide receiver they're pulling off. On the flip side, it's also the perfect matchup against a Dallas team that's allowing more separation than any other in the NFL. And yes, they're coming off the bye, but a lot of the value of a bye has to do with the fact that your players are generally healthier. It is not just some like magic that happens off the bye. A lot of that just has to do with injuries, and they're still hurt. Micah Parsons is on the wrong side of questionable here. They have allowed like 10 yards per attempt in any non-Deshaun Watson game on average. This is a really, really bad defense. They're the worst rushing defense in the NFL by rush EPA and again, virtually any stat you want to look at. I have a lot more faith in Kyle Shanahan's ability to score a bunch of points. He still has a good roster. I just think the market is overreacting to a Dallas team, which is bad. And the last thing I'll say is this offense has no ability to generate separation. Dak Prescott is throwing into tight windows a fourth of the time. That's way higher than the second closest team. You're going to throw a lot of interceptions that way. The base rate of interceptions is 10 times higher in tight window throws than not. They have a lot of systemic issues on offense that I don't think are going to be solved. And I don't think they're going to be able to keep up pace with certainly the Niners' potential tail. They're good. We have a large sample of Kyle Shanahan offenses being good well before the talent influx that came a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and as a Cowboys fan, there's a large sample of Kyle Shanahan owning the Cowboys as well. I have a tough time with this game. I was on Sunday night with Clive Bixby reacting to the opener. Definitely thought the opener was too high. We talked about that live on air, just based off of the injury San Fran suffered and the potential for Dallas to get some players back on defense. We really won't know who's playing here. Like Judah said, Micah Parsons trending towards not playing. They may get Deron Bland or Kalen Carson back at corner. They probably get Eric Hendricks back at middle linebacker. For me, just based off of the expected game script for the 49ers, I do lean to the under here. There's some 46.5 out there right now, even 46s. I think those are playable. Not necessarily that you have to fire right away. You can kind of wait for a better situation to present itself based off injury reports. But I do think the 49ers are really going to run the ball, keep the clock moving a lot, and really run a lot of long drives in this game. Judah brings up great points about the Cowboys receivers being unable to separate. This has been the case for them all year long. They've struggled to move the ball in recent years on this 49ers defense every single time that they have played them. And generally, I just don't have faith in their offense because they can't generate anything on the ground either. So very strong lean to the under here for me in this game. We'll end it off here with Monday Night Football. It is the Steelers' second week in a row in prime time, taking on the New York Giants. Daniel Jones sacked many times last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. This number is sitting right now at Steelers 6.5 in this game. Total in the game is 36.5. Hitman, you thinking this is an overreaction to the Steelers winning on Sunday Night Football?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of an overreaction also to the Giants. I just don't think they're as bad as they played last week. They've had an incredibly tough strength of schedule this year. With Malik Neighbors healthy, the Giants' last two games against Cincinnati, I'm just going to assume if Neighbors was healthy, the line probably would have closed 3 against Cincinnati. It closed 3.5. They're pretty much, the market was telling us the last 2 weeks that the difference on a neutral between Cincinnati, Philly, and the Giants was 4.5 points. The Giants definitely deserve a downgrade after the Philly game and losing Andrew Thomas, but I just can't get to a point where right now we're saying there's about a 5-point difference between the Giants and the Steelers, who is a team that I rate to be league average. It's a team that just closed as a 2.5-point home underdog to the Jets. Russell Wilson is still sensitive to pressure. The Steelers' offensive line is still dealing with injuries. The Giants have a big mismatch in the trenches against them. The Steelers' passing game is not exactly the passing game that I think can take advantage of the weakness of the Giants' defense, which is their secondary. And yes, I know that Pittsburgh's pass rush against an Andrew Thomas less Giants offensive line is going to be an absolute massive mismatch in this game. But as we've said about a few games earlier, Pittsburgh's style of play is just not conducive to them getting margin. And I'm not a trends guy, as everyone knows, but the worst subset of Tomlin's run as a Steelers coach has been as a favorite, typically when they're laying something around this similar amount of points. And road underdog has been a really good subset for Daniel Jones' career. For whatever reason, he's been terrible at home and a lot better on the road.
Hitman pulling a page out of the Pizzola playbook right there. I'm not a trends guy. Reference is a trend. Love that move. True professional move for the content right there. Yeah. All right. We're gonna get to our best bets here in just 1 second. Appreciate everyone who was involved in the chat today. Obviously, all the comments are appreciated. We see them in real time. Suma's in the chat in real time and reacting to it. So everyone that was there, a part of it, we do appreciate that every single week. This is a recurring theme for us. Starting best bets with Hitman. I never thought we would be here after last year, but this man is keeping this show above water. We would be an absolute laughingstock right now. Hitman, we'll start up with you. Let's get another winner this week. Who's it going to be and why?
Raiders plus 9.5, minus 102 at Fanduel. They're shop around. There is some 10s out there, but yeah, I agree that what we spoke about with the Chiefs earlier, like I acknowledge Mahomes is still the best quarterback in the league, but this offense has just resembled last year's offense where we had serious concerns about the Chiefs before the playoffs started. I know that they have won by margin their last 2 games, but it's still just stylistically a team, in my opinion, that's not built to win by margin. The Raiders are minus 13 in turnover differential. They have 4 more turnovers this year than the next ranked team. They've turned it over on 20% of their possessions, despite being one of the most conservative offenses. I would just have to think that positive turnover regression is coming to this team. I know that the past few weeks there's been, or last week, there was money pouring in against the bottom feeding teams. I'm not sure yet if Vegas is one of those, like to put them in the class of like the teams like Carolina and New England, where money was just pouring in against them. Last week, the last 3 Raiders losses against teams that the market is rated pretty average or slightly below average. In the Rams, Steelers, and Broncos, they outgained in first down. The Rams, they played pretty even statistically. They just lost to turnovers 4-1. They were statistically almost equal if the Steelers lost to turnovers 3-0. They dominated the first half statistically against Denver. They were up 7 at the 5-yard line late in the first half. 100-yard pick six, a game that was pretty even statistically. They lose the turnover battle 3-0. I think that Minshew is a small upgrade over AOC. Jalen Watson is a noteworthy loss for the Chiefs. Jacoby Myers is practicing early in the week, which should be encouraging for his status on Sunday. Schematically, the Chiefs have been really bad against tight ends, and Brock Bowers, I think, does have a positive matchup now against them. And I joked about the Antonio Pierce conservative decisions to help cover spreads, but it is true. Like these conservative decisions that he's having in these games, they help cover games. Now they reduce the chance of winning games, and with how turnover prone they have been, I expect another conservative game plan from Vegas, which it just tends to reduce variance, which when you're a 10-point underdog, you want to embrace variance to try to win the game. I think that the Raiders, with how conservative Antonio Pierce has been, it's more likely that they cover these spreads, but less likely that they win outright. So I think that the Raiders plus 10 has value this week.
All right, Hitman going there. And like you said, we're grading against the official FanDuel line at 9.5 minus 102. But we always encourage you to shop around, get the best price in market. We do highlight whenever FanDuel has the best price on this show. But in this case, you might want to look for a 10. Suma, on to you. You were a winner last week, looking to make it 2 in a row. What's it going to be and why?
I'm taking a risk here. If I'm wrong, you can come back in the chat next week and roast me. I'm taking a risk on the Bears. Jaden Daniels, he might have a rib cartilage injury and he might play through it. But I think it could be the same injury that Justin Herbert had two years ago. First game back, I think it was the terrible game against the Jaguars, when I remember correctly. So he doesn't have broken ribs. It might just be a cartilage injury. You can play through it, but I don't think he will. You would be willing to take too many hits, and they might adjust his playing style a little bit. Less ones, less scrambles, not at 100%. And if he doesn't play, I like my chances with going against Marcus Mariota. Like I said, I think the Bears are a very decent, well-rounded team. Offense is rolling. Commanders defense is really, really bad. I think the Bears offense alone should give them a very good matchup, and going with the Bears at 2.5 here.
All right. I'm going next here. I didn't talk about the Monday Night Football game, but I'm in full agreement with Hitman. I'm in full agreement with the chat, who all seem to like this side as well. I'm just going to take a stance that Russell Wilson is now overvalued in market. I'm going to take the New York Giants, 6.5 minus 118 at FanDuel. Of course, you can find 6.5 minus 110 out there, but I'm fine with any price in market on the Giants right now. I think this is an overreaction to last week. I will start with the Giants offense. Listen, it's not a great matchup for them. The loss of Andrew Thomas, I talked about it on the show last week when I played the under in that game. It's going to make a difference for them going forwards. They don't have a good offensive line. Pittsburgh has a good outside pass rush, but it's one of these teams that has to win by margin in this game. It's the Steelers that need to win by a touchdown or more. I watched the Steelers game again this morning against the Jets. Listen, the results were there, but there were so many 50-50 balls that went the Steelers' way in that game. If Garrett Wilson doesn't get a ball that hits him in the chest and gets returned all the way back inside their own 5-yard line, it might be a completely different game. We might have a completely different spread here. I'm just not buying the Steelers' offense altogether. The interior of that offensive line is bad. They have some real injuries that have affected them. Zach Frazier, their starting center, out. Their right guard, out. And you have Dexter Lawrence as a huge presence on that interior right now. Broderick Jones on the right side has surrendered more sacks than any other offensive lineman in the league this season with 7 sacks. This is the team that needs to win by margin against a solid defense. I'll take my chances that these teams are much closer than this line indicates. I can't get towards this number. New York Giants for me, plus 6.5, best bet of the week. We'll end it off here with Judah. Judah, floor's yours.
Yeah, gonna go with the over 44.5 in the Baltimore-Cleveland game. I think even perhaps more notable than the Jameis Winston coming back and starting for the Browns is that their offensive line is healthy now, and that matters a lot. I think what this kind of culminates in is we basically have no data or reliable data from previous weeks on the Browns offense. I think we can project it as far better than what they've shown, obviously, with all the differences. And this is a Baltimore team that is very vulnerable in pass defense. Granted, they've played a lot of really good opponents, but again, Marlon Humphrey is probably going to miss this game. He's been by far their best cornerback. And Jameis Winston is the type of guy who is going to play towards overs by virtue of the kind of throw selection and throwing deep downfield. And I would also just on the Ravens side, the offense is a house right now. And I think that the matchup against a Browns defense matters a lot less given the different ways they can attack. And I just see very, very few game scripts in which this game goes under. Not going with an alt this week, taking the regular total here.
And I will say Ravens, Browns, 44.5, over -105. Best price in market is at Fanduel right now on that game. So that's a good one right there. That's going to do it for us and the Week 8 NFL Best Bets. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit the like button down below. Subscribe here to Forward Progress on YouTube as well. And also you can catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with our betting insights every week. Drop your thoughts and picks in the comment below. Just like last week, I'll respond to everyone later on this week. I'll let you know how I feel about any specific bets that you may have, whether that's a prop, anything, I will respond to them. So for myself, Rob Pizzola, Young Judah, Suma, Fezzik's nephew, Hitman, best of luck this week. And as always, bet responsibly. We'll see you next time, everyone. Peace out.